So once again, we're going to be doing a lot of back and forth today. There's lots of little exercises that I want to do and lots of things that I want you to try. We will be going back to your drawing. There are things, for example, the eye that we need to go back, and we need a couple of things we need to do with the eye. Then we're going to talk about textures, and we're going to talk about what it is we need to do with these textures. And we're going to talk about lights and darks, with shadows, shading, that kind of stuff, okay? So I'm going to go back to the page that we had up here the other day. And we're looking for simple ways to do what we need to do. By the way, I'm sure you've all noticed this. I was very, flippant and trying to be funny about saying, don't drink at your table, you might spill something and it might make a mess. And Coffee. So maybe I can do something with it, maybe I can't, I don't know. But it is kind of important. Even us seasoned veterans tend to spill things when we're not paying attention. Okay, so we want to keep it simple. We're talking about line and putting lines on the page with the airplane stroke, coming into the page and coming off. Now remember, that's a big exaggeration. You're not doing that on your page. You're very close. We're talking about holding the pencil in a loose way in your hand. So I told you that I hold it like this, and I put the end in the palm of my hand. Now some of you don't have hands as big as mine, so your pencil's gonna run past, that's okay. But I call this the monkey grip. So we've got that, and then we just wrap our fingers around. And that gives us freedom to move our arm, and not just our wrist, to get nice, long, even strokes. This I call our detail hand. So when we're putting in details, you might want to hold it the old school 3-point stance. Just remember to not use a hard pressure. Be gentle when we're putting this down. Every single layer that we put down, and we're going to be putting down about 3 layers, you need to put it down gently. Don't scrub it down. If you want it darker, don't push harder. I think I told you last week, if you push harder, it's going to get shiny. When it gets shiny, the graphite has become slippery. And you can't put any more layers on top of that. It'll just slide right off. Graphite is very, very smooth. And I usually describe it like this, that graphite is like ice. And charcoal is like the big rocks that you see in the lake. And so in the wintertime, the water freezes, that's the graphite, and gets very smooth and slippery. The charcoal is big chunks, like when you have a fire in your backyard, big chunks of charcoal, they stick up between the smoothness of the graphite. And so you can't layer that smooth on top of the chunks, and you can't layer anything else on top of that smooth. It's just smooth. So that didn't come out as well as it did in my head. Let's suffice it to say that I'd like you to just put everything on with a gentle touch. We're going to be layering, and that's part of the way that I do portraits, or I do whatever drawing that I'm doing. I start with a very medium graphite, so HB, and then I go darker and darker. And what I'm doing is I'm filling in the white spots from the paper. So this paper is coming through, and I think you can probably see it here, where it's coming through, and it's not as dark as I'd like it to be. So I'm going to put a softer graphite on top of that to kind of fill in those holes a little bit more. And because it's a smooth substance, it'll fill in some of it, but it won't go in some of the other parts. So we need an even softer one to go into those deeper places. So that's why I always use at least 3. Sometimes I use 5 or 6, but 3 will work for what we're doing and what we want to do. Okay, so back to analyze, understand, and draw. So I'm going to refer you back. I was going to say I'm going to refer you back to your reference, which doesn't happen to be here. Refer yourselves back to your own reference. And I want you to really look at it again. But this time, what I want you to look at is what is that coat made of? We're going to start with just the coat and the red part of the hat. What is it made of? Wool? Could be wool. Could be velvet. I want you to really look at it because that's the texture we're going to try to reproduce. So it's not just a smooth line across. It looks to me like it's a whole bunch of little lines that kind of come together. That if I brushed it the opposite way, it would kind of, get darker. You know how it does when you brush velvet one way and then the other? That's how I see it. So we have to try to analyze what it is, and then understand it. So I'm going to use my example that I think it's a lot of little lines, and they all are very close together. So on mine, I put the lines down very much in a random order. So I didn't just do lines like this. Actually, I need to go to the big board. So I didn't just put lines on like this. I put lines on a little bit like this, a little bit like this, a little bit like this, so that I filled in everything, but with lines. Now I've left spaces. When I put it down, I put the lines right next to each other, but I wanted you to see what I was doing. So we really want our lines to be very close to each other and short. That's my interpretation of what that is. You may have a different interpretation. You have to understand what it is. You have to get that fixed in your head. What is that texture? And then you're going to draw it. It may not come out your fingers the way it is in your head. That's okay, because it's a process for us to figure out textures. If we look at the furry part around, what does that look like? So first of all, to me, it doesn't look like animal fur. It looks more like artificial fur kind of stuff. And it's not, there's no straight lines really there. I mean, there might be a few. For me, most of it is curls. And so when I put this down in there, I'm putting it down like that, so that I get some dark and some light, and try to make it look three-dimensional. And then, of course, there's the beard, and we're going to talk about the beard later on in the texture, so try not to do anything with the beard. And if you have done something with it, we're going to take all the graphite that's on there off today, and we're going to do a different thing with it. The face is very smooth, and you'll see that in your reference. Those lines are going to go on very smoothly and very close together. Now, of course, this is dark, it's charcoal. Once we have all of this done, and please, don't scream. I'm going to ask you to take your brush, and I'm going to ask you to brush into whatever it is we've done here. And you can see that it gets kind of muddy looking, and everything is everywhere. That's okay. What we want is we want to have a shadow behind the light parts. So a shadow behind the fur part, so that when we pull out the lights, there's a shadow cast back on to the shoulders or onto the arm, wherever it is we're working. So I'm going to say that a few more times as we're going through today, because that's kind of a difficult thing to get. We have to get that patina, that color, that sort of, that's what everything starts like, on the page first. And then we can manipulate it. We can make it darker. We can make it lighter with our kneaded eraser or with our vinyl eraser if we want to. There's one other thing. I think I'm going to say it now. Whenever something is over top of something else, so if I have this bottle and I'm sitting it on the table, where it touches the table is the darkest shadow. What does that mean for us? Where the fur comes around and touches the coat is the darkest shadow. We want to put a little bit more graphite there. Looking at your reference, you don't see that. That's okay, because we're going to lighten it up. But we want to start with a little more value, a little more darkness behind that fur part. So wherever anything crosses, so where the beard crosses the fur, there's going to be a little bit of darkness behind that to bring the beard forward. Dark things go back in the picture, light things come forward. That's how we make it three-dimensional. So we're playing with light, or the absence of light, I guess we could say. Okay? I hope I was kind of clear there. You can actually put your hand on the page and trace over it. You don't have to draw your hand, unless you're really feeling adventurous. So don't be afraid to use your brush and your kneaded eraser to make some of these textures. Remember, we can make that kneaded eraser into a point and just take out a tiny little bit. Or we can make it into a roller and roll it over top and pull off more. Oh, let's go with 1 minute and 19 seconds. And then we got to move on. We have stuff to do today. We cannot be sitting around. Well, I can, but you guys can't. What we're doing is trial and error. I can tell you what I do, but it might not feel right for you to do it that way. So you have to find the way that feels best for you to be doing it. When I move my pencil, I move it in very short lines and I move it around fairly quickly, always keeping in mind that airplane stroke so that it's not a squiggle at the end. We don't want that little squiggle because we won't get that out. We want just lines up and down, up and down. So we're going to leave this for a second. And we will this time be going back to our drawing, but don't take your drawing out yet. Let me talk first. So I think I have said to you before that if you get the eyes, you get the portrait. Well, in this case, we've only got one eye. So we're pretty much guaranteed we're going to get the portrait, right? The other one is winking, and so that's another sort of, we got to trial and error this and see how we're going to do it. But we're going to talk about what eyes are. And so keep in mind, when you're doing this, there's a little bit of anatomy that we have to know. It's not a lot of anatomy, but there are certain things we have to know to help us do the things that we want to do. So we need to know some landmarks. So first of all, your eye is a ball. And the ball kind of sits just a little bit above your cheek and just a little bit below your brow line. It's huge. We don't see the whole thing, but it's in there. We see just a little bit of it. But there's a ball in there. So when you've got kind of creases under your eye, That's the ball underneath. When you see the lid on the top going around, it's going over the ball. Okay? So when we're thinking of doing eyes, we're thinking always of round. We're not thinking of straight. We're not thinking of coming straight down. We're thinking of round. We're going around. So we're going around the lid. We're going around the lower lid. That's how we think of eyes. So to get even smaller, the way to make an eye look like an eye is to make sure that the pupil and the iris are round. Now, you can guess, and you can see on mine that I didn't make sure that it's round. I just kind of guessed to make it look round. There's a way to do this. And this is what I want you to do for this one. I'm going to ask you to come over and get one of these. It's a circle template. Luckily for us, we're doing one-to-one transfer from our reference to our drawing. So you're going to take one of these. Half of them are falling open, and I picked the one that's like childproof. Well, doesn't this make for good TV? Okay, here we go. I'm just going to put this right here, lady. Okay. All right. So you're going to take the template, and you're going to put it over top of your reference. You're going to put it over top so that the circle, where's the eye? Oh, there it is. The circle fits exactly the eye on our reference. It's going to take a little finagling. You're going to find it, though. Remember which circle that is. Count over how many it is. It's under this or it's by that. Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to find the right one, and then you're going to go put it down on your drawing, and it's like, no, which one was it? Try to remember. And don't worry, we all do it 2 or 3 times until we get it right. So you're going to measure the pupil, the iris. And then if you can, you're going to measure the pupil. And you're going to get it exactly round. And you're going to transfer that onto your drawing. Please, when you're transferring, don't push hard. It's very difficult not to push hard, so try to be conscious to put it on lightly. Because if you push hard, and it's in the wrong spot, it's going to be indented there. And you're like, oh, now what do I do? I can move it over, but there's still like a line there. So be gentle with it. You may need to do it more than once. Hopefully not. If you take your time and measure carefully, you should be able to get it in there. Now, we're going to go back to our first day when I gave you the eye to work on. Remember that eye? Everybody was so terrified, and oh my God, what's he doing? Well, this is going to come in handy now because it's in your folder. You're going to look at those steps, and you're going to follow those steps on this eye. We're going to make sure that the striations that you can see go to the center of the pupil, like wagon wheel spokes. They're going to go right to the center. We're going to make sure that the shading around the eye is gentle, but we're also making sure that we follow our reference. So there's a couple of things that you're going to be doing here. You're following the steps to do an eye, but you're also being cognizant of your reference. It's not as dark as the one that I gave you for the eye, so you're going to have to be a little lighter. For this one, I would suggest you use your 2H pencil. 2H. Because we're going to start very lightly, and then we're going to get darker. So I will tell you that the darkest place on the body is the eye. That's going to be the darkest place in your whole drawing. Some people say they think it's the nostrils. but I don't think so. I think it's the eye because it goes way back in there. Remember, it's a ball, and there's lots of room back in there. So go and grab one of these. This is yours to keep. Put it in your kit. Here's it. I'm sure you've all noticed it. You're not seeing the whole iris. You're only seeing part of it. So that's the part that we're measuring. It will be a big circle, and it will go into the upper eyelid and into the lower eyelid, but the part that we want is the part that we see. Yeah. So that's a very good point. Remember I said it's a ball, and the iris is a ball, and the pupil is a ball, and they're round, but part of it's underneath the upper lid. I gotta go get my reference. Lid, part of it's in the lower lid. Okay? And don't worry if it's not quite right. We can tap it out with our kneaded eraser, or as a last resort, we can use our vinyl eraser and we start again. Here, I'm going to introduce you to two more blenders. So the first one is called a stump. So I'm sure you've seen these things before. And what they are essentially is just rolled paper, but they're very hard. They're quite rigid. And so what they do is they help to move the graphite around the page, much the same way the brush does, but this is a different texture. So this larger one, the stump, is used for larger places. So I might use this here, in a large spot here, to help me blend and get that to go the way I want it to go. And you can see as I'm doing this, or maybe you can't, but it's blending very nicely, but still leaving the pattern underneath. This is called a tortellone, or as I like to say, tortellini. And this is for very fine places, small places. So for example, the corner of an eye. This will go right into the corner of an eye and give you the look that you want to have there. It'll go into the pupil and help to smooth out the darkness of the pupil. So they're over there on the table. Get a large one. Now there are two kinds of large ones, a thin one and a fatter one. Both of them work about the same. They have about the same thing on the end. But make sure you get a tortellini. And the big ones, you might want to kind of mash them down on the side of your page a little bit to soften them just a little bit so that they can move the graphite around. Remember, we're not erasing, we're moving the graphite around with these. Same thing as that we're doing with the brush. We're moving it around. To be about the textures and about the beard. Okay, but I do want you to make sure you're taking a break and you're moving around. And when we take our break, if you feel comfortable, leave your drawing out that you're working on. Let everybody have a look and encourage everyone. I think most of them, all of them that I've seen, look An excellent start. I want you to go get a piece of paper, right? Put your hand here and put it in your kit, okay? And then we're going to take a break. So, oh, it's like I'm going to say something really important. All right. So the first part of what we have to do is what we started for our homework was to make sure everything had some value, some color, some of the graphite on it. And we tried to make sure we put it on in such a way that it represented what it was. So is it the velvet of the jacket? Is it the fluffiness of the fur? Is it the smoothness of the face? All of that, we tried to put it on that way. And you may be finished and you may not be finished. That's fine. Part of what we're doing is trying to make sure that what we're putting down there feels balanced on the page. So at this point, it's probably not going to be very balanced, which is fine. That's where we are. What I want you to do is get your brush, and I want you to brush the parts that you've already done. So for example, I've already done this bit of the shoulder. I'm going to brush it, but I'm keeping in mind what it is. It's that velvety thing, so I'm going to give it little brush strokes. But also, on those sleeves, there are wrinkles in the fabric. Now, I'm going to try to give you a really simple way to look at this, because there's a whole, the one author that I follow has a whole book on wrinkles in fabric. Essentially what happens is the fabric turns on itself. So for example, this shoulder, let me get over here. This shoulder has turned in and come back out again. When we are putting the graphite down and when we are blending, we want to make sure that we have our graphite go in to where it is and come out. So we're using our brush so that it's like we're going inside a canyon and coming back out. So this is going in, this is going in, and this in the middle, it goes down and comes up. Okay? Now, that's a very simplified way of looking at it. You have to look at your reference. What do they look like? This looks like it goes in and comes out. This over here, these are reflected shadows. So there's a shadow here because the light is coming this way. It's hitting here and casting a shadow here. And then casting a shadow on that ripple of the jacket down here and then as well here. So those aren't the material moving, those are just bumps that are reflecting, the light is reflecting past it. Keep that in mind as you're doing it. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to go through everything and kind of blend it together. Now, this is going to be scary because you guys, a lot of you, have some really cool looking pieces. And you're going to look at me with that look in your eye and say, are you out of your mind? This is my picture. This is fantastic. I'm not touching it. Yes, it's very good, but I want it to be excellent. So this is our way of putting down our cast shadow behind where we're going to put the lightness. There has to be something there. It can't be white. So this is what we're going to do. So I want you to do that first. Take your time. And, you know, you don't have to blend forever. Just blend it out. Move a little bit of the graphite around. Make it look like a little bit more than it was. Okay? That's the first part we're going to do. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. You don't have to do the whole thing right now. I would like you to do it at some point. And then we're going to go back in with our kneaded eraser. And we're going to pull off some of that blended graphite that we put on there that we don't like. And then we're going to go back again a third time with our next pencil, which would be our 2B, and put some more marks in there to end up being the shadows. So we have the patina, we have the light, and then we're going to have the shadows with these other marks to give everything depth. I know it sounds a little crazy. Trust me, it works. I think I've said this to you guys before, that at a certain point, your drawings become like an unruly teenager. They are really kind of not very nice, just like teenagers. But eventually teenagers grow up and they become young adults and we like them again and they're pleasant and they're nice to be around. Well, that's what happens with your drawing. You have to go through that unruly teenager stage until you get to the nice, pleasant looking drawing that you're looking for. So don't be alarmed that it looks a little not quite right. We're going to get to it. We still have 3 more weeks. People that have been in the class before will attest to the fact that it actually does work. I hope. Too involved in this. We don't want a lot of movement. We want just a little bit. So what I want you to do now is take out your kneaded eraser. And we're going to shape it in a little point. So I hope you can see that. We're going to make a point on it. And we're going to go in first to where the furry areas are. And what I want you to do, because this is white, this is not, there's no real darkness there. We can see in our reference, it's very white. We're going to pull out little splotches, little pinpoints of white. And you're only going to get 2 or 3 taps, and then you're going to have to remake your little pointy thing. But we're going to go in and pull a fair bit off. Now, it may not look like you're pulling a lot off, but look at the end of your kneaded eraser after you've done 3 or 4. You can see that the graphite is on there. See, I can see it on the end of mine really clearly. And remember, we fold that in, and it miraculously disappears. And if you're not feeling it, if it's not getting white enough, make the end a little bit bigger, and make it a little bit more that it takes off. But as you're taking it off, you should hear that sticky sound. That means you're actually getting it. Pardon me? You have left it fairly light, which is exactly what we wanted. We want to just have a patina on there. But we also want to take out some of those darker spots, or some of those places that don't look like they should be whiter than they are. But this will not take all of the graphite off. This will lighten it up. We don't want to take all the graphite off. If we take all the graphite off, it's white, and then the picture goes flat. All right, so once you've done that, and I'm going to leave that with you, I want you to go back in. I have a pencil here somewhere. Here it is. I want you to go back in with your pencil and add a few dark swirls in a few places. Not all over. What? A darker pencil this time. So if you started with your HB pencil, you can either go to your B or your 2B. I tend to use 2B. I don't use B a lot because it's very close to the HB. But if you started with, for example, 4H or 2H. The next pencil we're going to is HB, and then to 2B. So the higher the number in the H's, the lighter the mark that it makes. The higher the number in the B's, the darker the mark that it makes. So the 14B is quite dark, almost black. So add a few extras in there, and you know what? Maybe you're not feeling it. Maybe it needs to be lighter now. Okay. You're looking at this and you're feeling how it feels. Is it balanced? Does it feel like it should be like that in the reference? That's what we're going for. A couple of minutes on that one because I want us to look at the beard because this is a technique that's a little bit difficult to understand. So this is a little bit more of an advanced technique, but I like you guys. I think you can do it. So let me move this out of the way so I don't trip over it. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is if you put any value, or even if there are any lines in the beard and the mustache, I want you to go through with your kneaded eraser and tap all of those out so that there's nothing there. Leave the outline, though, of where the beard is and where the mustache is, but tap out all the extra lines. Just make sure we can still see it. But all the interior should be as clean as you can get it. For this part, I'm going to ask you to get your stylus again. Okay? Now, I'm going to demonstrate with charcoal. This is what I want you to do with the stylus, but you can't see it unless I make it dark. Okay, so we see the beard, and we see all of the extra beard hair that comes down there. And some of you nicely outlined these long pieces that come in and some of the short pieces, so you have an idea of where those things are. You're going to be paying very close attention to your reference as you do this, but we're going to take our stylus, we're going to start, let's get the right implement in my hand. We're going to start at the top and come down. The reason we're doing that is because it will be thicker at the top. As it comes down, it'll get thinner. That's the way hair is, right? It's thicker at your head and thinner at the end. So we're going to be doing this. Okay? What I want you to do is I want you to start at the bottom. I want you to pay attention to what it looks like here. So my lines were very rudimentary. These ones kind of go like this and kind of like this. And I want you just to put short lines with the stylus around the edge. Once you have that done, I want you to go back and go over top and put another row in. Same idea. Looking at your reference, I want you to put in quite a few because it's going to have to look like a beard. And a beard has lots of hair. Okay? And then, same thing. We're going to go about that far, and then we're going to start doing it again until we get up around. Now, the beard here kind of comes down here like that in there. So don't forget to make sure you add that in there. And once you have all of that kind of figured out, you're going to take, not this pencil, you're going to take a darker pencil, like a 2B, or even an HB. I guess an HB would be fine to use. Both my 2H's are broken, but that's all right. Make sure you have a fairly sharp pencil, and we're going to gently go over the top of this with our pencil in small strokes, and we're going to try to go across. So we're going to do absolutely what I said not to do, but you're going to try to go across, and what you will see is the places that you've indented will not get graphite. They will be white. And that will be the basis for our beard. And I'm just hoping these are the places that I did this, because otherwise it's a terrible demonstration. So yeah, it's in there. And then once you've gone over that lightly, you're going to take your kneaded eraser again and lighten it up. Okay? So the same idea all the way along. Whoops, we're going to be going across the lines that are there. There we go. I'm suggesting a 2B. You can use your HB if you like. It does need to be sharper than this pencil though. Sorry, mine just broke when I took it out of there. So fairly long and fairly sharp, so use the pencil sharpener. And then take it out. But you will see the lines of the beard start to come out. And it will take probably a little bit of doing for you to get it all done properly. Pardon me? I would use the smaller end. Yeah. And remember, we're starting up and going down. Try to do the whole beard, yeah, before you do any using any graphite.
So obviously I
increments, because that's how the hair is kind of growing, inside and then coming underneath and backwards. But you see most of the bottom of the beard. You don't see where it is in the middle. So that's why we're starting at the bottom and then going up and going up. Marks in there. And remember, and one of the things that you will see is that if you put a line around there, that line is way too dark now. And if you can find your vinyl eraser, which I can't, you can erase that line, because now we're going to get the hair that we're putting in. And remember, we can lighten this up. It's not quite what you think it is. Lighten it up a little bit. And rounded. Now, of course, this is not going to be the whole beard. This is going to be the lines underneath the beard. We're going to take off the color and put the sort of some darker lines to be beard extra lines on top of that. So that this is a process. This isn't something that's happening right away. It's a process, and we're going to go through. And we'll notice that one side is a little bit darker than the other side, obviously, right? Your style will be dependent on how tired you are at that time. And I've always said, if you're in a good mood and you're happy, that will be reflected in your work. If you're tired and you're slogging your way through it, that will be reflected in your work. So you want to find a state where you're feeling pretty good and things are going well, and not stretch it out too long, because you don't want to run out. Got to stand up and then refill your gas tanks, I guess, again, and then come back. the better you feel when you're working, the better quality of art you're going to be able to do. So if you would, please come over. There are 3 handouts that I have left for you. I have this young man here who is not me and is not anybody I know. There is this handout here that talks about mouths and noses and gives you some examples and a little practice area. We don't have a lot of the mouth there, but we do have a fair bit of the nose. So I want you to kind of look at that and go through it. Really, the nose is just a big bump on the face. So thinking about how the light affects a bump is how you're going to get that. And then the last one is really about, how to keep fresh when you're drawing. What kinds of things you can do to help yourself. At a time, I do quickly want to tell you, this is a practice sheet. So if you want to practice, and you don't want to go through the whole transferring onto a page and all that kind of stuff, this is a practice one. So you can practice doing the skin and doing the hair, and keeping in mind we want to keep it simple. So the hair is just, there's spots there that are dark and, spots that are light. And practice with that and play with it. That's just a practice sheet. The mouth on one side, the nose on the other side. Not the way it is in real life, but hey, I had trying to save paper. As I said, we don't have a lot of the mouth in our particular drawing, but we do have the nose. And so this is a pretty good one, and it talks about, there's the ball at the end of the nose, the shading comes up the sides. Keep in mind, these are samples. These are not the nose that's on our page. So pay attention to the nose on our page when you get that far. And then the final one, did you guys pick one up? Can I borrow this one? I put mine down somewhere. So this is about keeping your site crisp. So it says a lot of the things that I've already said. Take a break. Please, take a break, 15, 20 minutes. If you're having difficulty with the drawing, put it someplace, stand it up, and stand back and look at it. We tend to get so close to what we're working on, all we're focusing on are the things that we think are faults. If you stand back away from it, you get to see the whole picture. Triangulate, which is a fancy way of saying, is that ear right where it should be, parallel to that eye, or should it be higher or lower? So just kind of compare things. Splatter vision is a new one for me. I never tried this one until the last 10 years or so. But it's really, you make your eyes out of focus and you look at your drawing, and it helps sometimes to pull out the areas that aren't quite working if it doesn't feel right. Flick your eye back and forth really quickly between your reference and your drawing, and reference and your drawing, reference and your drawing. And things come out that way. And finally, look away and kind of look with your peripheral vision. It's once again a different way of looking at it. And the one that we have used quite a bit in my classes, turn it upside down. You will see things that you think are terrible, but when you turn it upside down, it all kind of fits right. Or not. I mean, that might be an area to work on. Okay? So I'm going to leave you to that. Thank you very much for today. We will get the video up as quickly as we can. And don't forget, you're not invited to Thanksgiving dinner.
Is that yours?
Yes.